How often do you come across a pilot? This is something I think about. Who says, I never thought about it, I just fell into it. I feel like that never happens, or does it?
Well, because that's my story.
Is
I
it
am
really?
the guy.
Oh, shoot. So you're the guy.
But there aren't a whole lot of them.
There aren't a whole lot of them.
And I don't know how many others I've met, honestly. It's always been when I meet someone and the conversation comes up this way, oh, how'd you get going, or how did you start, or what? It's almost never what made you want to be a pilot. It's a foregone conclusion that you wanted to do it since you were a kid. All of them. They don't say what made you want to do it. They might say what was your first job or where did you work before here. But no one in the aviation business asks you what made you want to be a pilot, because they know in their minds the same thing, or they suspect it's the same thing that made them want to be a pilot, which is, boy, you've always loved airplanes and you've always wanted to fly, and gosh, ever since you were a kid, or as long as you could remember, always wanted to be a pilot, or my dad, or my, probably the next generation, or my mom. You never know.
That's
but it's somebody.
That's such an interesting point you bring up. I never thought of that. For someone who hasn't thought of being a pilot, who is just entering into the industry, you're right. Everyone who meets them assumes that it's something they've always wanted to do, when that might not be the case.
Right. The presumption is well founded. I mean, it's there for a reason. I think most people who are pilots have always wanted to be pilots. One of the filters is that if you don't really, really want it, you're just not going to do it. Is it difficult in terms of a set of tasks to perform? Maybe some people are more gifted than others. It might be more easy, less easy, maybe more difficult for other people. But the degree of difficulty isn't necessarily, in my mind, in the task execution or even the knowledge learning. Putting it all together and being sharp all the time, or at least sharp enough, it's a commitment. It's a bit of a lifestyle, and most people would say it ain't worth the trouble. You can go fly on your own if you just want to fly from time to time, but professionally to be a pilot is a commitment in terms of how much of your time are you willing to spend being proficient, and literally betting your life every time you take off that you're going to get it just right.
Right. Interesting. So this is awesome that you're one of those people who's never thought about it until a certain point in your life. And so I want to hear, what happened. So you were a kid.
Yeah, sure. That's
you wanted
exactly
to be
right.
You wanted to be a fireman, probably, or a cop.
I
Not
never
a
wanted
pilot.
to be a cop. I never wanted to be a fireman. And I understood that people did. But personally, I always wanted to be some kind of an athlete. I wanted to go to the Olympics. And that never really left me. So I was a track guy. Baseball wasn't an Olympic sport. And anyway, I wasn't getting a whole lot better at it. But I fancied myself a decent runner, an okay long jumper. But really, I wanted to be a sprinter. And I just loved it. I thought the Olympics were the pinnacle in my mind. And so that's all the way from when I was a tiny little kid. Now, I always liked the idea of a plane, but not more than I liked the idea of, having a house or something like that. It was just another thing on a little kid's mind.
How old are you when this idea crosses your mind of, I think I might want to fly an airplane?
32.
No kidding.
I was already in the business for 12 years or 13 or 14 or something like that. I got started really early actually doing it, and here's how it happened. When I was in high school, my family moved around a bunch for normal and understandable reasons. My father got a job here. My mother was finishing her education there, stuff like that. And eventually our family unit sort of began to disintegrate, and as is pretty common, our parents separated. My brother and I were two. We were in high school at the time, outside of St. Louis. And I thought, as a 14-year-old, I thought probably I was very special. And, I particularly hated my life more than anybody normally would, that I was some kind of exception. And I thought, I want out of here.
That's very pilot-like of you.
Yeah, right. Me, I'm special.
Should have been a good sign.
Right. I only known.
I'm the only one.
Yeah, exactly. I am the one. Not there can be only one. There is only one.
Yes. That should have been a clue. That should have been a good clue.
So I was, probably kvetching in my soul. And I thought, I want out of here. I want to do something for me. I want to be master of my own domain, my own life.
Right.
And I thought, I can't be in high school. I have to do something. So the first thing was get a job. I got a job. Now, by dumb chance, I had a couple really cool friends in the 8th grade who were in summer school. Now, in all the other places I'd lived in my life, summer school was for the derelict. It was for the people who were way too many detentions. It was a punishment.
Uh-huh.
It was remedial.
Right.
It was the opposite in this particular school district. This is what all the cool kids were doing, or at least that's what it seemed like to me.
Right.
I took great classes in summer school. I took rock climbing, got a PE credit.
Whoa.
I took chess and got some elective credit. It was a great time, actually. And when I was 15, I had a job. I had done French as an independent study and had all these summer school credits. I did the math and looked like I could get out of high school early by graduating and not dropping out.
Whoa.
Exactly. And I thought, well, now I have some decisions to make. I remember standing in the foyer. And my mother lived in this sort of, let's call it a modest condo in some distant suburb from St. Louis. And there was, I don't remember why she wasn't already there, but it was after high school one day. And my mother came into this, she walked in the front door, and I would have seen her there, and she would have said to me something like, "Did you know St. Louis University had an aviation program?" And this was show-stopping because I'd made my interest in aviation known. I wanted to learn to fly, not as a professional, but I wanted to learn to fly for fun because I thought it would be cool, probably because I thought the chicks would dig it because that's everything I did when I was 15.
Totally.
In my mind.
Totally.
Because, yeah, only as a 15-year-old. I'm sure that phase passed.
Yeah.
Quickly.
It's long gone.
Uh-huh.
It's long gone. I no longer think the chicks want me because I'm a pilot. That was just 15.
Yeah, and believe me, I stopped thinking that when I was 15, but never mind. That's a different story. So when I heard her say that, I was blown away because St. Louis University was close. And I thought maybe this was her angle because I was going to get out of high school and I was going to be 16 at this rate. And I didn't have somewhere to go. I was going to maybe work at the job that I'd gotten washing dishes in front of the house stuff a little bit. And I graduated, got a promotion to line cook. And I think...
Is that where your love for cooking or baking started?
I actually don't think that's where it started, but maybe that's where it was cultivated.
Got it.
I got to really express myself there at that restaurant. They really gave me the run of the place as a 15-year-old and 16-year-old, which was kind of wild, but
got it.
I made the most of that experience, I think. And saving that for another time, try and finish this part of it.
Yep.
Which is that I was miffed because it was really, she said something to the effect of, over my dead body is this kid going to be in a tiny airplane like that? You know, she would have been totally against it. And I would have written it off. And I didn't care that much because I thought, well, one day I'll be a grown-up and I'll do whatever the hell I want.
And this is your mom?
This was my mom, yeah. So, my dad was also not in favor, by the way. So
this is interesting because when I hear you say that, here's what crosses my mind.
Go on.
I'd probably be lying if I said that I wouldn't be a pilot today if my mother wouldn't have been as behind it as she has been. That would probably be a lie because I think I probably would be because I wanted to be real bad.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I will say. The fact that my mom was so on my side when it came to, like, I remember shopping for a flight school with her in Vegas, you know what I mean? Like, together. Sure. She was such a part of it, and she was such a fan of the idea, and she promoted it. And when I hear you say that, I'm thinking to myself, if I had my mom to fight too, in addition to everything else I have to go through to become a pilot, that would be difficult. How much more difficult do you think it made the fact that your mom was not into it? How much more difficult do you think that made your whole becoming a pilot?
Well, when she was not into it, it was not happening because I was a kid. You know, I was 15, 14 years old when I maybe first brought it up, 13, I don't know. And, you know, when I first brought it up, it was dismissed wholesale. Gone, see you later, no way, no chance, no how.
That sucks.
And, you know, it didn't. I mean, I was into plenty of things, and I thought, well, I don't care because I'm not here for long. And I'm a short timer, you know? This was just on the list of complaints, or let's just call them complaints, that I would have lodged if there were anyone to hear them other than the people I was lodging them against, i.e. my mother and father and brother.
Okay.
And if there were anyone else listening, I might have spoken up, but anyway, it was just another thing.
Right.
So when she said this to me, I was completely shocked, but it made it worth looking at this St. Louis University, which I was not considering. My whole idea was as far away from home as possible, and this place was 50 clicks down the way. Right. So I thought there's no way, but aviation sounds kind of like fun plus what? Mom?
Interesting.
I got the application, looked at it, and I was in state, so there was some money to be saved there, and I didn't. No one had a lot of money then.
Right.
It was going to be student loans no matter what, and I, maybe get some grants. And I did okay on my ACTs as a 15-year-old. I was, not the cleverest 15-year-old, I'm afraid to say. It's just a fact. I like to believe I got smarter in my 20s, but it took, let's call me a late bloomer in that way.
That's fair.
And so I didn't know how many options I had, but I wanted to go far away, and this place was very close, which made it not an option at first in my mind.
Why'd you want to go far?
It was the home life that I wasn't enjoying the most. We'd moved around a bunch, like I mentioned, and that's not to put anyone at fault or blame.
Uh-huh.
But I wasn't enjoying myself, and I was having a hard time. One of the blessings of having moved around a bunch is that my brother and I ended up sort of split school district, and the curriculum as an 8th grader or a 9th grader would have been different, or 7th and 8th or whatever we were. And much like my brother did in the year before me, I went up to the high school for the second part of the day and took some math classes when I was in 8th grade. The junior high and high school weren't far apart, and I wasn't trying to take algebra for a second time.
Got it.
Right. So I went up and took geometry. My brother had done exactly the same thing. It didn't seem like a far stretch.
Right.
So I walked up to the high school, and that was the end of it. And because of this combination of events, I wasn't afraid of college either. I thought, well, I might struggle at first, but I'd rather be someplace where I'm independent and struggling than, putting my feet up and taking algebra a second time and waiting for the grass to grow and the clock to tick and the water to boil and all the rest.
Totally.
And so you asked me what made me want to be a pilot, and I'm not even close to having
what made you want to be a pilot
yet. I was already a pilot for many years.
So you had your private.
When I got into that St. Louis University, again, I still didn't want to be a pilot. At that point in my life, I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
So I looked at this application. It was early decision, and you could be a pre-medicine, pre-law, pre-physical therapy, a bunch of stuff that looked like a lot of school and a lot of reading that I didn't want to do. And one more thing, by the way, aviation.
Huh.
Right. So I ticked that box thinking I won't get into the program, also don't care.
Right.
I'll get into the university, study to be an architect. I'll get in because it's early decision, and then I won't have to decide whether to, stay working at this restaurant and drop out or something if I don't get into school. It was a lot of problems solved if I could get in. Sure enough, in that December, I got a phone call from the admissions counselor, said, look, you're going to get a letter, but I wanted to tell you personally, you're in the program. Congratulations. I couldn't believe it. So I'm into college, right? And I had just turned 16 at that point by a few months, and she's telling me I've got this pilot career in front of me. And I thought, oh, well, that changes things a little bit.
Right.
But I still didn't want to be a pilot. I didn't actually want to be a pilot until I got hired as a 737 captain at China Airlines in 2015.
Okay, so this is the craziest sentence I've ever heard a pilot say. I did not know I want to be a pilot until I was a 737 captain. What do you mean?
When you fly in the United States, everything is on the rails. We have it dialed in. It's not just an art to us, it's a science.
Okay.
Well, it's a science and it's an art. To our credit, we've done a lot of things very well. We've made a lot of mistakes. But we have strength and we have finesse, both in this business. We have a lot of history in aviation. Some would say the richest. Some would say, the French wouldn't say, but we would say. And we do a good job of it in general. And we've been doing a better job for the last 40 years in particularly. Very well, even. Safety gets better and better. Standards go higher and higher. We don't accept accidents. We do not accept accidents. Yes, they happen, but we don't accept them.
What do you mean by we don't accept accidents? How do other countries differ when it comes to accidents?
The attitude in some countries, whom I won't name for benefit of avoiding repercussion, the attitude may be something like, accidents are inevitable. And the implication is that we'll carry on anyway, just like we're doing. And we'll try and get better, whatever, but our safety record is pretty good. But it's complacency. And we already know that complacency is the biggest killer in aviation. And there it is, up front and center. Their attitude toward flying is, we're pretty good. We're pretty good, and that's okay. Right here, we don't accept that. We have to get better all the time.
So here we don't believe that accidents are an inevitable part of flying airplanes.
In theory.
Got it, which is good.
That's how I view it. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. We do not accept accidents. No, it is never okay to take off and not know if you're coming back. It's never okay. There's no amount of, this could go wrong. There is no amount of that welcome in the flight deck in commercial aviation, period.
There's no room for second guessing.
Well, look, there's tons of second guessing, but there's no room to say, like, imagine this. You're a passenger on a plane. And your captain's up there thinking, maybe we'll make it, maybe we won't. Can you imagine?
It's horrible.
You paid for a ticket, man. You paid for a ticket. And not just the presumption, the deal is that you're going to get from point A to point B safely. And if you're not going to get from point A to point B safely, you're not going to go. It's just going to stay at point A. Right. And that's it.
Right.
There's no room to accept an accident.
So, and you know these things because you, as you mentioned, you've flown both here in America and abroad, which I want to get to. So, but before we get there, so how do you actually, at what point in life do you actually say, you know what, so you had your private?
Yep. So I went to St. Louis University.
Okay.
Was going to drop out of the aviation program at every step of the way. Stayed in it because I was going to take a different math class. One thing led to another. The reason I was going to take a different math class is because there was a girl involved, obviously.
Man, your entire life is...
I'm telling you.
If we took women out of this world, your life would have just been like a flat line.
Probably. I wouldn't have done anything.
I mean, hey, women are... they do more than...
I might have run on the track still because I was enjoying that, but...
They do more than they get credit for.
Yes. I probably a subject of another podcast. But it'd be fair to say that I made most of my decisions, certainly between 15 and 30. Certainly I made most of my decisions because there was a woman involved.
Women driven.
Or I hoped that there would be a woman involved, and this was one of them. So
you know what though? If we think about it, I was talking about it with someone the other day. If you like I said, there's no women in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it would do to the economy? Think about that for a second.
I think there wouldn't be an economy.
Dude, nightclubs, gone. Most things, any place you go to hang out to hopefully meet a chick, gone.
Do you know why I got a job? So I could get a place, so I could have a girlfriend at the place.
There you go.
Otherwise,
dude, the entire world
I know, it's pitiful.
Happens for the fact that there's women.
Well, it sure as hell does.
And men.
Yeah, I mean, for a teenager or a guy in his early 20s, there really is no more direct motivation
than women.
I mean,
it's powerful.
Or at least I can speak from my own experience. And I don't want to stereotype all men everywhere, but certainly my experience was, well, I got to get a job so I can get a girl. I got to get a place to live that's better than this so I can get a girl. I mean, I was happy with the clothes on my back.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not saying there is. It just happens to be the only motivation I had. And people will say, oh, you want a job for like this reason and that reason. But I wasn't that evolved. Like self-actualization, my prefrontal cortex doesn't really take over until I'm 28 or 29 or 30 or 31.
Yeah, but who cares what your motivation to do something is?
Well, not I. I mean, you never care at the time. You're just motivated.
Yeah.
And
no,
I
it's
was
incredible.
motivated, although my motivation being a pilot wasn't to be a pilot. I liked it. It was fun, for sure. But I did need a job, and it was one, and I was qualified to do it, so I kept doing it.
How old were you when you got your private?
17.
Nice. So that's pretty early.
Yeah, or had I just turned 18, actually. It might have been a couple of days after. I remember it was my grandmother's birthday. So that's a few days after my 18th birthday.
And how old were you when you got your instrument? Do you remember?
Also 18.
Oh, so you did private instrument.
I did private. So what happened was I got to school when I was 16, turning 17. The aviation business was a little short on instructors at the time, and I couldn't get a flight slot for a while, and I started playing rugby. And when I started playing rugby, I then broke my leg. Yeah, that was a fun story to tell.
Jeez.
And then, and I love my rugby even still. But I took a little while to get back into flying, and by that summer, I'd gotten it back together. And I guess from the time that I enrolled in the program, in the time that I got my private certificate was probably 1 year, although the flying part took place over about 2 months.
Wow.
Like say April and May, and then into June for the check ride.
Uh-huh.
And then I was already there, and at that point, everything was kind of hunky-dory. And then it was July. I was doing my instrument rating, and things really hit the fan then, unfortunately. My mother, may she rest in peace, she had herself a little bit of a stroke, and she didn't make it very long after that.
Oh.
And that was sort of right in the middle of all of my instrument training. I think that was in July of 2001.
Oh man, I can't even begin to imagine going through that while flight training. Flight training consumes you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I didn't want to do: be a pilot. I had no interest.
So
I still wanted to be an architect, by the way.
So your motivation wasn't as strong as some, I want to be a pilot kids out there who are getting their instrument. You were just like, it's a hobby.
I wanted to do the program. I wanted to finish. I was being very stubborn. I had started it, and in the first 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 kind of lessons, I was airsick. The whole time. I wasn't even turbulent. I was airsick or motion sickness at the time, and I really struggled. I had to get some real consistency, and I hated flying. Actually, it was when I wasn't feeling airsick, I was feeling bored. And if I wasn't feeling bored or airsick, I was lost. I didn't like any of it. It was loud. It was uncomfortable. I couldn't see over the dash, because I expected it to be low like a car, but the instruments are kind of up to here. I'm thinking, what am I even supposed to see? What am I supposed to hear? What am I supposed to feel? None of this felt like flying to me. Flying to me was doing some sort of tumbling pass down the mat, bounding at the very end for some double layout and being, or maybe one layout with half a twist and being over the volleyball net.
Right.
Seeing the world go by in slow-mo.
So I will not mention the airline that you're at unless you tell me it's not a problem. But I don't know if we have to. Yeah, we will not mention it. But I will say it's
we'll leave them out for now.
A large cargo airline in the United States, right? Could I say the plane you fly?
Sure.
You fly a 747.
I do.
So this is fascinating to me. So for someone who flies a 747 around the world, this is awesome, because if there's someone out there who's watching this and is flight training and hates every minute of it, that is not what will stick with you for the rest of your life, because I'm assuming you don't feel that way now when you fly.
That is correct.
So that's good news.
I really enjoy it, in fact.
So at what point?
I'll tell you where they're split.
Okay, perfect.
When I first got really good at something, and I was really good at it, navigation.
Interesting.
I was so good at navigation. I felt like I learned about not just, look, navigation's a basic skill. You essentially trust your times and your calculations, and you trust your times, and you look out the window, and if things went well, the thing is there. And that's really rewarding. But if you're not connected to the outside world somehow at large, if you've never really been out of your comfort zone, your first cross country is pretty hectic. I mean, it's not all the way across the country for those who don't know. It's, a whole 50 miles, but
it's called cross country.
It's called a cross country.
It's good for getting people into aviation. I'll get to do that. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. The mileage isn't incredible. I think my qualifying cross country was like 51 nautical miles or something like that. It was, and not really outside of the practice area that you normally would be in of a 40-mile radius. So you kind of barely make it outside
to the other side, yeah.
to the other side of the practice area that you're familiar with. And so that's not so incredible. But when you trust your chimes and you nail it to the second, something clicks, or something clicked in me, and it was more than just a feeling of accomplishment of having done something properly. It was, the world actually works as advertised without me having to see it first. I experienced it exactly as it was supposed to be done, exactly as the calculation. I was slotted in with air traffic control, with the other traffic around, with the weather, with my own math, no one else's. I did the math. And I looked out the window in the second, and I saw that thing I was supposed to see. Blew my mind. And all of a sudden I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. This is all right.
Yeah.
And I looked forward to the next one. First time I ever looked forward to the next flight lesson was after that day.
Amazing. So Navlogs is when it clicked.
Something like that.
Something around
Navlogs were
navigation.
easy for me because I was good at math.
Right.
And by the way, I still wanted to be an architect at that point. But I really did enjoy that thing that I was doing. And I looked forward to doing more of it.
Right.
Instrument training and instrument flying was even better because it was like the next iteration of that.
Right.
And for those people who don't know exactly what instrument flying is basically navigation with your eyes closed in a way. You really have to do the calculations. Trusting your times is one thing, but you trust everything because you can't see anything. And you potentially can't see anything. But even if you could, the more meaningful thing would be your calculations, your instruments, and what's inside the flight deck as opposed to what's outside the flight deck. And you have to mentally construct a world that fits. And it's quite a thing.